Good Samaritan helps family stranded on side of road. Good Samaritan funds Children's Hospital. Woman saved from burning house by Good Samaritan. How many times have you seen headlines like this? This is generally how we understand the parable of the Good Samaritan. A compassionate stranger comes to someone's aid. However, there is much more to this parable. As we can read in Luke chapter 10 verses 29 to 37, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.'" Contrary to popular belief, a Good Samaritan, or rather a Samaritan, is not a person who helps someone in distress. In the biblical world, the idea that someone was a Samaritan was not nearly as pleasant or inspirational. Simply put, Samaritans were seen as traitors to their faith and were hated by the Jews. The Samaritans were a mixed race, only partly Israelite. They were seen as having compromised the faith. They worshipped other gods and departed from the law, as stated in 2 Kings chapter 17 verses 24 to 41. They only recognized the first 5 books of the Old Testament known as the Pentateuch. They also worshipped at a rival temple built on Mount Gerizim rather than Mount Zion. So why did Jesus make someone who was so hated the hero of the story? We begin by asking why Jesus told the parable in the first place. The entire story begins not with the parable itself but several verses earlier, in Luke chapter 10 verse 25, when a lawyer comes to Jesus and wants to test him. He asks Jesus, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus tells him to look at the law, and the man replies that the law instructs him to love God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Luke chapter 10, verse 27. When Jesus instructs him to follow this teaching, the lawyer responds one more time, "And who is my neighbor?" Luke chapter 10, verse 29. The lawyer's question implies that he thinks there is such a thing as a non-neighbor. In other words, someone to whom he does not need to extend mercy and compassion. Traditionally, neighbor would refer to a fellow Jew, so his viewpoint is not that unusual. The Jews saw their neighbors as their fellow Jews and excluded foreigners and Samaritans. A first-century Jew would have understood and accepted the lawyer's question. Jesus, however, does not accept that limited understanding. He instead challenges the lawyer to reconsider who is his neighbor. Jesus' response indicates that his teaching is about caring for all who are created in God's image, rather than classifying people and finding different obligations for each category of persons. As a result, Jesus will teach the lawyer about the deeper meaning of the law and what is lacking in his heart by answering his question, "Who is my neighbor?" with the parable of the Good Samaritan. In contrast to the priests and Levites' refusal to help the man, the Samaritan, the one who is despised and seen as not honoring God's law, is the one who helps. The ones considered the epitome of law-keeping do not. Jesus' parable turns the lawyer's world upside down. Can he admit that the Samaritan is the one who is good? Once again, the lawyer's answer is telling of his personal hardness of heart. He cannot bring himself to say the word Samaritan. He refers to the good man as he who showed mercy. His hate for the Samaritans, his neighbors, was so strong that he couldn't even refer to them in a proper way. Jesus then tells the lawyer to go and do likewise, meaning that he should start living what the law tells him to do. In the same way, the parable can expose our own prejudices. Who is the Samaritan in your life? Who is the person that you want to dismiss, that you don't want to admit can be a hero and do good? If you identify the person you have a hard time accepting, you have found your Samaritan and have understood Jesus' parable. So, who do you identify with in the parable of the Good Samaritan? Follow for daily biblical stories. Thank you and God bless you.